Hey, it's Mirna from Trainers Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainers Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. If you're a trainer or facilitator, I hope you already know how hugely impactful play can be on a learning experience. On one side, it engages our brain, it makes learning more experiential and more engaging. On the other side, it brings in many positive emotions, and positive emotions are crucial for learning and successful learning process. And then it also makes people connect with each other better, again, something that hugely supports learning itself. But then, every now and then, you get that person in the training saying, hey, what is this stupid game? This is useful. I don't want to play. This is not useful. Or maybe you hesitate to bring in a game or a certain activity because you feel like, oh, in this environment, nobody will want to play. Now, it's not that they don't like to play. It is that you didn't targeted the right type of play for them that truly engage them. That's why today, in this episode, I'm exploring 8 play personalities, 8 ways in which we engage with play. And you're guessing, each of us loves some of them and hates the others. In other words, if you want to build an engaging, playful learning experience in which you bring in games and play that are appropriate and useful and valuable and engaging for everyone in a group, you want to be really mindful of these 8 and you want to mix and match between them and build a bit more holistic way of play instead of just following your natural way and your natural preference in how you play. The framework I'm sharing today is based on the work of Dr. Stuart Brown, but I'm throwing in for each of the 8 personalities of play 3 quick tips based on my own experience with training and workshops of how to use that or how to use that personality or how to speak to that personality more in playful experiences you design. And then I'm also warning you of one way that you can adapt these activities so they would also not break the experience for those who don't have that preference. So the idea is we want to build it for all 8, but we also want to be careful while adapting it for one of the 8 personalities, not to sabotage it for someone else. So I'm always giving you 3 tips to satisfy each personality, and then 1 tip how to still ensure that by satisfying that personality, you don't break the experience for others. Ready? Let's dive right in. The first personality of play is somebody we call Joker. And Joker is simply someone who loves making jokes and listening jokes and who loves making others laugh. And with Joker, there are 3 ways, there are many more ways, but I always want to give you at least 3 tips, at least 3 ideas. There are 3 ways you can bring them into play. One is by using humor more within the workshops. And allowing them to use humor and kind of creating a bit of that informal atmosphere where it's kind of invited and open to use humor. Of course, as long as it doesn't become too distractive or damaging to the learning experience itself. But we can very much tie it into the learning experience in a fun and light way, bringing in positive emotions and actually making it useful for everyone pretty much. Second way you can engage Joker is by using more of improv in your workshops. Of course, improv exercises and activities will not be useful and appropriate for every type of content or workshop theme, but for many teams they will be really valuable. So if you're working with leadership, with communication, with facilitation, with presentation skills, and with any related topics to that, even things like giving feedback or storytelling, definitely look up some of the improv exercises and activities and seek to introduce a bit more of them into the workshop. And then the third way you can engage them is by using a bit more of storytelling, especially by inviting them to engage with different stories and build different stories and colorful engagement. Kind of giving them opportunity to invent things and design things and be playful about things. And in that way to make things a bit more colorful, a bit more engaging, a bit more fun for them. Now the question is, how do you create all that without breaking it for others? What about people who don't enjoy too much humor and too much jokes, and they feel like, it's not really being serious learning if that all exists? Well, the key is that you make your learning process meaningful, that you design an education, a training, a workshop that is goal-oriented, that participants are clear on that goal because you shared it with them, that are clear on the process, and that are clear that they will gain significant value out of this workshop. And then if on the way towards that value it's sprinkled with humor, that will not disturb them. The humor will disturb them if they feel it's distractive or that it's useless and not providing value. So as long as you can tie it in with valuable activities and just sprinkle some humor on top, instead of having humor as full-on distraction, everybody will be on board. The second persona, and by the way, you can download the handout, right? I will attach to this episode a link to one 2-page handout where you can download a little quick tips and insights about each personas in case you're not at the opportunity to make notes now. So remember, you can always do that for this and all other episodes. Now, our number 2 is artist or creator. That's this persona that really enjoys creating and making things. Often they like to be involved with their hands, they like to actually build something, make something. Sometimes it's more about drawing or even writing. It can be a bit different preferences, but ultimately it's about creating something, designing something. This persona, one of the best things you can do is bring in more hands-on and physical approach, allowing them maybe, including exercises where you're building different prototypes, or if it's really more cognitive workshop that you're doing and prototypes don't really fit, you can think in terms of creating different symbols. For example, asking them to create a symbol for different learning insights that they just have, or symbols for their team, or maybe third option would be sort of a team artifact. So that's 3 tips of how you can engage artists. Give them chance to engage hands-on through prototypes, give them chance and invite them to create different symbols for different insights or different moments for themselves, or engage them into creating something for the team, for the group. Maybe within the small group, they can be representative who actually draws the thing they've been discussed or designs some sort of a symbol. Now, how do you not ruin it for others? Well, by not making everyone do the same thing if they don't want to. In other words, by creating more freedom and more choice. And ultimately, when we talk about all 8 personas, this is what you want to do. Give more ownership, more freedom, more choice for people to engage with the content in the way that suits them best. That can mean in some case that you might want to encourage people, if it helps them think, to doodle just for themselves in their own notebook. And that doesn't mean everybody has to doodle, but that's an option. That's something you want to give them. And same if you're asking for creating this kind of team artifacts or symbols, personal symbols for certain insights and so on, you can be there very flexible in terms of inviting people what they want to create. They can go from a drawing on a post-it to a keyword on a post-it to something symbolic that they actually build with their hands. And all these different things can be different kinds of creating symbol, where somebody who's more creative can engage with that more creative side, and somebody who more just needs focus and reminder can just write a keyword on post-it and take that away. Now, our third persona, and I'm very tempted to get deeper into every, but let's aim to cover all of them in one episode. Our third persona is the explorer. That's the persona who loves to explore something new or different. And that can be a bit diverse within that persona if they like to engage physically or emotionally or mentally or all of it. Ideally, we again want to give different options. But what they bring in is this curiosity and desire to try out something new and search for novelty. So what do we want to offer them? Number 1, first tip. We might want to offer them questions before we give them answers. So they actually have a search for an answer before we provide them maybe with a specific framework, or even we don't provide them, we just design a search for that answer. But the important thing here is start with a question instead of starting with the model or with the specific insight and so on. And that's a really good tip for any persona. It's very brain-based. Not just for the explorer. Second thing you can offer them is to basically build your whole workshop as a journey of discovery. Again, this is something that will be engaging for most of personas, but especially for this one. If we think of this whole workshop and a process as a diverse pathway with different steps and different places that they go, and with each part comes with a bit of variety and novelty and re-engages them in a different way. Maybe even playing in this space of combining physical, emotional, mental in different ways in different modules. So really thinking in these terms of journey of discovery. And then the third thing, within anything that we are building for the explorer, it will be really helpful if we have different modular steps ahead, where in each step there is something to discover. Even if we're talking about big framework or big way of building some process, it will be really helpful if we can chunk it down to bits, and in each bit we can introduce a bit of curiosity, something to be looked for, something to be discovered. Now, what do you need to do if you build this to ensure that other participants don't disengage, that those that are not really so much into exploring don't lose their focus? It is important for them to keep clarity of the goal and the process. To, at the beginning of the workshop, really appeal to what is the goal and what is the value behind the process we are engaging with, and what will be some steps of the process and why, and what is the role of discovery in that process, and what is the role of active thinking, and how, in which way it contributes to learning. So they would also want to engage actively, even if they're not driven just by curiosity. By the way, if that is what you would enjoy to learn to build better, these journeys of discovery, emotional journeys for your participants, where they're really engaged and almost hijacked by curiosity, where they surf the wave of different emotions and really explore and enjoy different facets of that journey, I would invite you to check out the course on optimal emotions in learning. It's an online course, fairly short, just a couple of modules, that really opens a new perspective for you and gives you some amazing practical experiential tips and tricks and mini experiments that we do together to learn how to create deeper emotional impact on your participants and how to guide them on a journey that will be really memorable, to use emotion to actually support their learning. So you might want to check that out in the description of this episode as I'm moving on through the other personas. But that is something, if you think in terms of play, engagement, emotions, and how to do that even better, how to do it in a way that you bring in a lot of safety and certainty, but also a lot of variety and surprise and fun, then Optimal Emotions in Learning is truly a course built for you specifically. Now, our fourth persona, and by the way, it might be fun to start recognizing where do you fit, which of these personas are close to you and which of them feel a bit different than your style. Our fourth out of 8 persona is somebody we called the collector. That is the person who loves enjoys gathering interesting collections of objects, collections of experiences. They just think in these terms of collections, taking away, gathering, putting things together. Now, how can you engage this play persona in a learning experience? Number one, you might encourage them to capture the key takeaways from the session in some creative ways. You can offer them that as an individual exercise, or you can offer that to a whole group as an optional exercise to do together, and then you will see collectors more active in that process, of course. And by no means should you make it very mandatory for everyone, but you could give it as sort of a playful solution and follow up on it a couple of times and just engage them in that way, that they approach their learning takeaways as a little treasure hunt. The second way you could engage them is by using different passive boards. I don't know if you know what passive boards are, but they're great and amazing. They're basically just different flip charts that you put on the wall. You can use one, you can use multiple different ones, and you just give it different titles and intentions. For example, you can have a passive board like parking lot. Maybe you're familiar with that one. It's basically a passive board for any questions and topics that are not in our spotlight right now, but we might want to discuss them later, so we'll park them a little bit. And that's a place for participants to capture any, questions they might have or any further topics they might have. But then we might also have passive board that's like aha moment board, where they write whenever they have a certain insight. Or there might be a passive board that's to gather all the tools we shared and discussed today. or maybe it could even be a passive board for feedback on different parts of the process, or for their emotional journey, to actually note what were the highlights for them and so on. So you could really play with this, setting up these boards and allowing participants in a very individual and ownership-based way that they choose what do they want to engage with. And the third way you can use the whole collector, or you can engage the collector, is that you invite them in parts of the session when there is some group work, or maybe the whole group work or small group work, that you invite them, that they act as sort of a harvester of knowledge, that they're the one kind of capture the insights and in some way organize them and present them. And of course, then it should be very voluntarily role and see who wants to engage with that role. But I hope that, I hope that you manage to match it to the right person. Now, the important thing not to break the experience for others while engaging collector is to keep in mind that no gathering of insights and passive boards and all these things, none of them should be mandatory. You should have several points where you invite people to engage with them and really give them reminder and give them opportunity, but really leaving them also as an option for those who wish to and enjoy engaging in such way. And also, to make it easier for them if they don't want to engage in that way, you should make it clear that there will also be a handout with some of the main points in case they don't feel like harvesting it themselves and in case that is not helpful for their own learning process. Having that said, you do have a handout for this one as well to download and for all other episodes. Okay, we have 4 more personas to go. So before I move on to them, I do want to address a little bit how can you use these personas when doing your workshop design and when doing your learning plan. So the important thing is 2 things. No, 2 important things are: 1, to be aware of your own style and which of these 8 maybe is some of the personas or styles or types of play that you like to engage with, and which are the ones that you don't really pay attention to. This will enable you to really cover better people who are right now in your blind spot. So that is a very relevant question. Which of these styles resonate with me more, and which ones are not so appealing to me based on my own style? Hence, probably people who have that style in my workshops don't really enjoy and they disengage, and how can I serve them better? So on one side, we want to discover blind spots. On the second side, we don't want to over-engineer this process. We don't want to make it, an experience where everybody engages in their preferred way throughout the course and, be very perfectionist and burdened by creating an ideal experience for them. No, instead what we want to do, we want to think, how can we mix and match it enough that everybody finds something for themselves? And as we're adapting to different styles, how can we ensure that we don't break the experience for those who don't have that style, hence it's not very interesting for them? I hope these tips will help you with that. So let's move on to the next one. Our number 5 persona is director. Director is somebody who really enjoys planning and executing events, loves organizing stuff. A bit of a bossy personality there potentially. So somebody who really likes to make things happen, but like organize them, run them, drive them, and so on. Now this one can be a little bit risky, but here are 3 tips to engage with them. Number 1, allow them to set their own learning objectives and plan at the very beginning as much as you can. And also engage them in active structuring of the activities as you're doing them. Yeah, so allow them to navigate their own journey, to define their own goals, and to some point to choose how specifically will they do certain activities, to a point to which you can, of course. Second, whenever there are certain structured games, if there is a role where somebody can do more of this planning or directing, offer that role to a volunteer, and probably the right person will step in. So if you just be aware when you're structuring a certain activity, when you're performing a certain activity, is there a space for this role? And if yes, can you offer it? And number 3, whenever you introduce a problem that they have, like a problem to solve and so on, this person will really enjoy if they can tinker with planning the framework which to use in order to solve this problem. So you do want to think, whenever there is a problem, not to just push people into experimenting with solution, but actually allowing this persona to think a little bit, how do I approach this problem? Now, How do you approach the director and support them without breaking it for others? Well, the important thing is that you protect others from their influence in case they're not very good with being a director and structuring the activities. That means that you still want to navigate the process and be mindful of how the process is going and developing, and also that as much as you can, you want to allow them to shape their own experience and not necessarily influence the group experience too much, even though sometimes you can also give them the reins of the group experience as well. Now, our persona number 6. I hope you're still managing to follow. Don't be shy to, pause a bit, grab the handout, give yourself a bit of time to think if this feels like a lot of personas in half an hour. Our persona number 6 is competitor, somebody who loves a competitive game, ideally game with rules so they can follow the rules and win, and somebody who really likes to play to win, and they love kind of reward and just this idea of achievement and idea of a win. Now, this can be challenging one in training, because often in training we want to build improvement and progress for everyone, and we don't want to focus too much on the result, but we want to focus more on the process, right? So here what we can do for this persona. Number 1, we can do different gamified challenges, bringing in as much gamification in terms of points and levels and so on as we can, but also making it personal in that they're playing for their own points, for themselves, that it's not so much oriented on who won. They will know still if they won, but that it's more oriented them winning against themselves or against the challenge. The second thing that you can use is performance-based feedback, which is something that's great in terms of learning for everyone anyway. So in a way, having people set personal improvement goals, having a lot of that opportunities within the same workshop to do the same thing several times, and each time to do it better based on feedback from previous round. This is great process, especially for skills like presentation skills, facilitation skills. It's also the way we approach Train the Trainer, by the way. On Train the Trainer course, we do a lot of this, where people keep on having active tasks and receiving feedback every time, and they can actually keep an eye on their own progress in a way. So we want to keep this performance-based feedback, because that's one of the best ways to progress in terms of learning. And number 3, if you really want to unleash them a bit, then building some fun tournaments with the whole group. And that's great if you can do that with something that's not very high pressure, that's not very relevant, but it's more something that's an energy booster and a bit of more engagement booster for the group, without relating it too much to learning, without distracting the learning, just kind of sprinkling it as an energy booster. A quick tournament. Maybe you know the game rock, paper, scissors. That's one game that can become very fun tournament in big groups if you want to build up a bit energy in fairly quick paced time. It's basically sort of a tournament where everybody plays rock, paper, scissors, and whoever loses from another person, they have to become their cheerleader and cheerleader as loud as possible. And then that really builds up until the ultimate 2 people with a bunch of their cheerleaders fight for the victory, So with competitor, important thing to keep in mind, I think competitor and director are really 2 personas where it's most fragile, that you can sabotage other people's experience if you give them too much attention and if you allow too much space for their process. So to protect the rest of the group from that with competitor, you want to start always by building a lot of collaboration and safety before any kind of competition. You want to make sure that people are strongly connected and friendly to each other and caring about each other before introducing any kind of competition. So in order of things, there must be safety first, collaboration first, the groups first, and only after that, building up that competitive mini streak. Okay, let's move to our persona number 7. We have only 2 personas to cover, and then I'll also give you a quick summary of all of them in case you're getting a bit lost with too much options. The next one is Kinesthete. Somebody who loves to move and loves to push their body to see what it can do. You can imagine in most of modern workshops, this is the persona who suffers hugely. And you know what? In general, all of us and our brains actually suffer hugely from lack of movement in workshops. So by serving this persona, you will actually serve everyone to have more brain-based learning and more energy by giving them a bit of movement. So very quickly, with Kinesthete, we want to do number 1, Integrate more movement wherever you can, however you can. You have a pair work, have them stand up and talk about it. Walk and talk in pairs. You have a small group work, great. Have them move to another side of the room so they would walk there. Have them gather around the flip chart on which they write. Keep on that movement going. As you're transitioning between different mental activities, also keep on changing the space and the movement in space between these activities. The goal is to have people move, not crazily a lot, but a little bit, every 20 minutes or so. Because that's how long it takes for our brain to drop in oxygen when we sit a lot. Second thing you can bring in are many cool embodiment exercises. Now, I'm not even going to that topic right now. If you want to hear more about it, reach out. You can do it by replying to any email on Trainers Toolbox newsletter if you're there. If you're not, you should be there, so do sign up. Link is in the description of this episode. But you can always reply and tell me you would love to learn more about that topic, and I'll seek to cover it in another podcast episode or in one of the newsletters. You can always reach out through LinkedIn, by the way, as well, if you're resisting the newsletter. Find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. So if I hear from a few of you saying you would love to learn more about embodiment, specific exercises, and how to fit them in training, I'll be happy to cover it in some of the future videos. And that goes for any other topic too, so do reach out. Share your preferences. Now, the third way to integrating more movement into the workshops, apart from integrating it spontaneously in different exercises and bringing in more of embodiment exercises, to just also encourage people more to actually use the breaks actively. Send them for a walk during lunch. Ensure that lunch is not delivered, but they have to go and get it somewhere. Encourage them to actually stand up during the break and do a bit of movement and step outside and so on. So just kind of making them more aware that this matters and giving them more permission and opportunities to use the breaks for this. Now, how do you create workshops with more movement and more embodiment without sabotaging others? Of course, as always, it's about giving more freedom. In general, movement is good for everyone, but maybe not everybody wants it at every point. But the important thing, really important thing with movement is that it should not be distractive. If you introduce movement in the middle of deep reflection exercise, in the middle of discussion, in the middle of explaining some concept, it will be disruptive. So you want to integrate that movement into the transitions. Ideally, in a workshop, you want to have transitions roughly every 15 to 20 minutes. Because that's optimal for brain as well. We talk about this a lot on Train the Trainer, so if you were not aware of that, that might be the course for you to join. But ideally what we want to do is really support these transitions also with movement and not have too much of spontaneous movement that's distractive in the middle of one activity or one learning point. Well, this really depends, of course, on the activity, but that's very generalized rule. Okay, the last persona, okay? And this is one that's gonna make your workshops better for everyone as well. That is our storyteller. Storyteller is someone who loves using their imagination to tell stories. And sometimes that can be more in writing, sometimes it can be more in speaking, sometimes it can be more even in acting it out. Of course, this can depend on different personalities within that persona. But overall, the storyteller loves designing and building stories. So you definitely want to engage them to do that, because stories are great for training and for learning and for engagement, and they will also engage others more if they share more stories. So here is how you can do it in three tips. Number one, you can offer them story prompts in different parts of the session that they can use to maybe outline their main learning, to do the summary of part we covered before, to share their first experiences with a new topic. So you can do all that instead of regular sharing in a bit more story prompt, storytelled way. Second thing, you can invite people to keep on sharing metaphors or personal anecdotes. It will make the points that you're discussing so much more colorful and memorable that this is highly, highly recommended. Also, you sharing metaphors and personal anecdotes, but also inviting them in shared space by everyone else. And number three, the exciting one, how about building your whole workshop as a story? Use the narrative arc, design their journey again in a way that's engaging and that truly resembles, hero's journey. A wonderful way to design a workshop, really active, really powerful. And again, something that we discuss a lot on the optimal emotions in learning, short online course. So definitely check that one out if you feel like this is something that would be exciting to build more of. An important question is, how do you not lose others if you give Storyteller too much of a stage? Well, first of all, to be honest, this is one of the personas which, if you support them, will actually be the best for everyone else as well. So it will really support the engagement for others as well, which is great. But at the same time, there might be one thing you want to make sure to do to bulletproof engagement for everyone else in the group. And that is to ensure that all the stories we're sharing and metaphors and anecdotes and so on remain relevant. That they remain relevant for the rest of the learning experience and for the theory we're covering and so on. And then the second thing that you might want to keep in mind is if you create storytelling exercises for everyone, to make sure you diminish the pressure there. Somebody who is not a natural storyteller, who's not super easygoing with it, might feel a bit under pressure if you expose them too much to them having to do a bit of a storytelling. So here you really want to make sure that you lower the pressure, that you keep it light and so on. Now, storytelling is also one of the things that I'm delivering advanced course for trainers and facilitators on, as it's an amazing topic and serves so well the learning process. So if you're interested in that, I will also link it in description. It's 2 days advanced storytelling training for experienced trainers, facilitators, speakers who want to dive into building better stories and making stories that support learning process better, to make it more memorable, to make it deeper, to make it more engaging. So you might want to join me there because it's an amazing course and I'm really excited to be delivering it again this year. Now, we covered 8 personas. 8 personas is a lot to keep in mind. So again, don't try to overstretch, don't try to overthink, don't try to go through all of them at once and make sure you cover everyone and then end up stressed and overwhelmed. Instead, look into the 8 of them. I will summarize them very quickly again and think, which 2 are my strong sides? Usually we have around 2 that we prefer, 2, maybe 3. And which of them do I tend to neglect? And how can I strengthen the one that I neglect? So go really for the biggest impact that you can create. So really for your blind spot. And again, you can download this list of personas also in the handout in the description. So we had joker, we had artist or creator, we had explorer, collector, director, competitor, kinesthete, and storyteller, which will be one persona that you will keep a bit more in mind already in your next workshop. I hope you will keep this in mind, and I do want to invite you, if this episode was fun and enjoyable and insightful for you, make sure to also subscribe for the Trainers Toolbox channel so you also see other topics and episodes there. And if you want to deepen your learning, by all means, apart from downloading the handout, maybe you also want to join me in some of the courses where we go really deep, really experiential, and cover many of these topics to much deeper level. One of them is Train the Trainer, the fundamental courses where you build strong foundations of workshop design and delivery and truly train and practice the skills of a great trainer and receive feedback from a small group you work with. It's something where we go really deep and strong in designing those fundamental level skills for a trainer. And then the other 2 courses related to this topic are courses for advanced trainers, so somebody who already has fundamental knowledge of design and delivery of workshops, but they want to go up, level up, level deeper. One of them is Optimal Emotions for Learning, the short online course I was mentioning already, that will teach you how to build those emotional journeys and leverage emotions to make learning deeper and more engaging. Really powerful course. In my mind, the course every trainer should go through, so highly recommended to check it out. And I'm also offering a free ebook that will introduce you to this topic, so you can also grab it in the description if course seems just a little bit too much right now, but you want to step into the knowledge already. And then finally, the storytelling 2-day deep dive for advanced trainers that I mentioned already. I will link all these courses in the description. I hope I might see you on some of them, and if not, I'll see you in the next podcast episode. As this is one of the early episodes on Trainers Toolbox podcast, at this point I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts and which topics would you like to hear next. I have so many topics in mind. I have to learn how to prioritize them. So please do reach out. You can do it through LinkedIn. You will find the link in the description of this episode. Connect there, send me a message, let me know what have you been listening and what would you like to learn and discover more about. Or if you're on Trainers Toolbox newsletter or choose to join it soon, you can always hit reply to any of the newsletters and share your thoughts there. I'm very much looking forward to stay in touch. And as you know, fresh YouTube channel and podcast channel will be very appreciative of your likes, comments and subscriptions, as it really helps spread the word about all the cool topics we're covering here. So I hope you will give me that benefit of, support as well by clicking on like, subscribe, or maybe dropping a little comment under the video or the podcast episode you just checked out. I hope you enjoyed this one. Looking forward to see you soon. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoyed Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.